I remember landing in Sicily with my wife. It's a few years ago. It's really late, and they'd lost our bags on our connecting flight, so I'm already not in a good headspace. We'd reserved a car from this, discount place online. That was my first mistake. When we get to the rental center, the clerk at the counter, this skinny rental car mob boss, he tries to triple the price. So now I'm exhausted, I have no bags, and I'm getting conned. So I get angry. I ask him what kind of scam he was running. I threaten to find a new place. An empty threat, of course, which he knows. So he won't back down, and now I start shouting at him, which is my second mistake. As I'm shouting, this huge man steps through the back door. Huge. Big hams for fists. He looks at the rental clerk, and he tilts his head toward me. Should I take care of him, boss? Kind of vibes. The clerk shrugs, like a mob boss, and he waves his hand soothingly to Mr. Hamfists, aka Signore Pugno di Prosciutto in the original Italian, and he looks to me. And I pay. Welcome to Hello Unknown, a podcast exploring the hidden parts of the human experience. I'm Jonathan Wright. Today, our first episode, Cheater. There's this finance guy. He was born in DC, but he grew up in New Jersey in a middle-class home. He played tennis. He was in the school band. When the story starts, he's working at a bank. It's the early 90s. I couldn't find a picture of him from that time, but there's lots from later. I found one at age 37, 1998. Chin slightly up, lips pursed, hair already lined with gray. His name was Andy Fastow. At this bank, he was doing a complex new sort of financing, asset-backed securities. Not a lot of people were doing it, so headhunters took notice. He soon got an offer to work for a company called Enron. When he agreed to leave the bank and move to this new company, he asked his boss, Jeffrey Skilling, whether he could take a month off for vacation before starting. Skilling's reply was this: "I need you down here immediately. You have to get something off our balance sheet by year end." My dad tells me when I was 3, I used to say all the time, "What do I want?" That was my thing. What do I want? It's a little over 3 decades later, and I still have that unsettled feeling sometimes that something is missing, that I should be doing something to get where I want to go, except I don't know where I want to go. I want boundaries and walls. I want shoulds. You should do this, and then you'll get that. Because I like should. I really like should. I like rules. I prefer rules over not having rules because rules are, that protective enclosure for me. They're the boundaries. They say, go this far and no further, and if I don't go any further, more often than not I know what to expect. Some reward, or at least no danger. Nothing to be afraid of. Andy Fastow was 29 when he joined Enron as a junior in their finance department. At age 37, 8 years later, the year of the photo I found, that was the year he was made CFO of this multi-billion-dollar company. So, Enron. If you know the name but not the whole story, it probably lives in your imagination as a villain at the center of a major scandal. My friend's wife, listening to a draft of this episode, leaned over and asked him, "Is Enron Watergate?" That's the feel. Enron was one of the biggest, fastest growing companies of the late 90s. Fortune named it America's best managed business the year before it completely collapsed on itself. It's hard to overstate, billions of dollars of value just disappeared. The collapse was so massive, it pulled down not just the company, but its auditor, a multinational accounting firm called Arthur Andersen with 85,000 employees, most of whom had to find new jobs, largely thanks to Enron. The 90s was the World Wide Web. Boo.com was a virtual clothing mall with a digital assistant, which is great, except the website was too large for dial-up internet, which is, what everyone had. So for most people, it was a $150 million blank page. Bankrupt, May of 2000. There was Webvan, a $1 billion company for online groceries. Bankrupt, June 2001. Pets.com and their sock puppet Super Bowl ad, liquidated January 2001. And Cosmo.com for 1-hour delivery of everything. Bankrupt. Very bankrupt. But that was 2000. In the 90s, investors wanted internet, and they would pay millions for it. So Enron gave investors internet. In 1985, Enron was a small oil and gas business. By 2001, the business of this oil and gas company included energy trading, fiber optic cable networks. It had a deal in the works with Blockbuster to stream movies. It was worth around $70 billion at its peak. It was the 7th largest company in the United States. Enron stock was worth $90 a share on August 23, 2000. In just over a year, Enron, like Boo.com and Webvan, was bankrupt. Shares worth pennies each. So, the rules, my rules, they're not just for me. They're for everyone. That's why I hate rule breakers. I hate cheaters. It's infuriating that someone would take this game, which we've all agreed to play, and where we've all agreed on the rules ahead of time, or at least I think we have, and then just ignore the rules, or flout them, or start changing them subtly, or maybe overtly, whatever, and somehow they get away with it. My Italian mob boss, the rental car guy, he was exactly this. And I got much angrier than I should have at the rental counter in the late evening in Sicily, because it was never about the money. All in, it wasn't even really that much. It was about the rules. And he broke the rules. He was a cheater. That always feels personal. So, get something off our balance sheet. What does that mean? Enron was a public company. Public companies report their finances to the public. They're legally required to do that. That's the rules. So in very simplistic terms, this means they report, among other things, their income. Or, if they're in the negative, their losses. Again, very simplistically, the best companies, unless you're in the growth stage, the companies you want to buy shares of, they're typically very profitable. Think Amazon, Apple, Google. Profit good, loss bad. So, you're a finance bro at Enron, and you look at the books, and you see income, yeah, but you also see a fair bit of losses, and losses bad. So you turn to the rules, and you see something. So you talk to your lawyers. They say, sure. You talk to your auditor. They say, go for it. Because the rules, at that time, said that you could, legally, just take a loss off your balance sheet, so it doesn't show up. They actually, believe it or not, let you do that. Sort of. They didn't say it outright. Of course not. But follow the letter of the rule, and there was this little hole in the wall, the little gap. And Andy Fastow was really good at exploiting the little gaps. This was his trick. He'd create a partnership. It was mostly owned by Enron, but it was separate. And that was the point. It had its own balance sheet. And this sheet didn't need to be shown to anyone. So the partnership could purchase Enron's loss-making venture, and the losses would fade like the body of Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Empty robes. The losses off Enron's balance sheet, hidden, tucked away, safe and forgotten in Fastow's partnership, still owned by Enron, but in a different way. And that made all the difference because the rules said so. For me, in a way, rules are for hiding. Rules are boundaries, or the walls. So by definition, there's something outside the walls. Another room maybe, a larger room, a darker room, filled with who knows what, unclear boundaries and its own set of rules. It's the unknown. Beyond the rules is the unknown, and I don't like it. I don't like the unknown. So I hold on to the rules, and I'm going to get very angry if you challenge them or some circumstance challenges them. Because it won't matter if the cheater has no face, no personality, just some happenstance. I get upset at that also. And it can't be personal with death or a pandemic or a broken limb. But whether it's a rental clerk or a pandemic, they're both telling me the same thing. They're telling me the rules I hold on to are not the rules. They're my rules. So yeah, I take it personally. Because it is personal. It's very personal. Toward the end of the 90s and into the early 2000s, Enron's share price began to climb up and up very rapidly, more than doubling from $20 in late 98 to $45 a year later, and a few months after that, $70 and then $90 in August of 2000. So in the middle of 2001, this Enron VP named Sharon Watkins was looking at a spreadsheet. She saw a row heading, which was new to her. It referred to these off-balance sheet partnerships. In the spreadsheet, there was a profit column and there was a loss column. These columns showed hundreds of millions of dollars in losses. Hundreds of millions. Watkins knew what Enron had actually reported, and the numbers didn't add up. The magic rules, which made losses fade like deceased Jedi, they didn't apply here. The spreadsheet showed it all. Watkins did some investigating, and then she sent a memo to the founder and CEO, Kenneth Lay, setting out the issues and what she'd heard from colleagues involved with these partnerships. And Enron did nothing. They had an internal audit, which produced an internal report, which was buried. But eventually, of course, just months later, the public found out what Watkins already knew, and the collapse began. A rapid slide into bankruptcy. Stock price from $90 to 40 cents a share. And 5 years of jail time for fraud for Andy Fastow, which was much shorter than it could have been, except he snitched, cooperating with prosecutors against his former company and former bosses. They requested a shorter sentence. Fastow later said, "I found every way I could to technically comply with the rules." There were loopholes, these little mouse holes in the corner of the room. He said he ran everything by the company's accountants, everything by the lawyers. It was within the rules, or they wouldn't do it. That's what he said. But how do you get convicted for fraud when you act within the rules? Well, the answer is there's more than just accounting rules. You can't defraud investors, hiding millions of dollars in losses just because there's a loophole in generally accepted accounting principles. It's still fraud. But that didn't occur to Andy Fastow. Not at the time. But there was more out there than just Andy's rules. In May of 2008, I'd just finished my undergrad at UBC. I'd gone to India, this 2-month journey, to see new things, meet people, and teach English at an orphanage in northern India, near Dehradun, a city I'd never heard of with 500,000 people. My friend Derek had been teaching there for a year, and I joined him. I've changed Derek's name, by the way. Anyway, after the 2 months in India, we flew to Hanoi in Vietnam to connect with 2 other friends, taking this tiny bus for the 2-hour journey east to Halong Bay. And it was there, on this UNESCO World Heritage Site in eastern Vietnam, that I found out Derek was a cheater. Halong Bay is stunning. Halong in Vietnamese means descending dragon, and you can see it. Curves of brush-covered limestone islands in the warm blue-green water, like the spines of a giant lizard. We bought tickets on a junk, an old 3-story wooden cruise boat. On the first night, we drank Baileys and peppermint schnapps on the lowest level, the sleeper level, which was a mistake. On the middle level, the dining level, the mistake was highlighted at 7 the next morning with pulsing karaoke humming throughout the wooden boat like a floating tuning fork, clearly audible in our bedroom. This Vietnamese pop. I still remember, even now, 13 years later, the words over and over and over, nailed into our already pounding brains. I'm so lucky, lucky, I'm so lucky, lucky. Then there was the top deck, the sunbathing deck. We played cards there when we got bored late the next afternoon, sitting on these wooden deck chairs, sweating in the humid air. I don't remember what game we were playing, but what I do remember very well was that Derek cheated. Derek and I had gone from teaching at an orphanage in India, just the two of us, to a vacation in Vietnam, and two more friends, one of them my best friend. So I don't know, maybe Derek felt out of place, or like he'd fallen on the friendship ladder. I might have felt that way in his position, like I needed to assert my dominance, male friendship like two rams headbutting on the side of a mountain while the beautiful you watches on and David Attenborough narrates. I can't remember how he cheated. He might have peeked at my cards. Seems a little benign, though. Derek's really smart, like the smartest guy I knew then. So maybe he figured out some illegal card counting or nefarious shuffling. But the point is, he cheated, and I caught him. When I called him out, he admitted it. He admitted he cheated. And then, as I do, I got angry, and I pressed him on it. But instead of capitulating, he doubled down. He cheated regularly, he said. It's what he did with games. Who cares? It's just a game. I was incredibly offended. I'm still offended, if I'm honest, after all these years. But there's one thing about cheaters. There's one admirable aspect to the spirit of the cheater. Derek knew, Derek had always known, that the rules weren't everything. Derek was a student. No money, no job, but he'd pay for my dinner sometimes, every once in a while when we'd hang out together. I remember him doing it for the first time, and I said no, and he shrugged and said, "It's just money." It was like a door opened. That obvious fact crossed the boundaries of my rules. Always save, never spend on myself, never mind anyone else. And I remember thinking, wow, yeah, it is just money. He's right. I could do this too. He crossed boundaries in other ways too. He was rude sometimes. He was brusque, insensitive maybe. There were times when we'd hang out at his place and he'd just be doing his own thing, alone on the computer. But there was also the sense that hanging with Derek meant you could just do what you wanted. It was natural. It was relaxed. No rules. And so when Derek went to live and teach at an orphanage in India without pay for a year or so, with no one he knew until I got there close to the end of his trip, not a vacation, not a 2-month stopover like me, to live there. When he did it first, that opened it up for me. Gave me permission to take the risk, to do what I otherwise probably would never have done. In Sicily, they'd call me a piccolo fastow. A mini fastow. It's not that I bend rules, and I'm not looking for loopholes. It's that like Andy Fastow, I choose to believe, mostly unconsciously, that my rules are all that exists. But of course, that's not true. I still don't like cheaters. I'll never actually like cheaters, but the cheater is a question, an uncomfortable one, from Derek and the rental clerk guy in Sicily to Andy Fastow, and also to me. Have you looked outside? Have you left your room lately? The rules aren't everything. There's more out there. There's more out there, and I want to learn this. For when I fail miserably, or I get fired, or the rental guy stiffs me, or the pandemic arrives, when the unknown butts up against my rules, showing itself more real than the rules ever were, I don't want to be too surprised. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be afraid. I want to look on at the unknown and nod and say, okay, I can handle this. Or what can I do? Or what's interesting? What's new? Where's the potential in this moment, hard as it is? I want to step out into the unknown and have a look. And that will be this podcast, where I step out and take a look at the unknown, look really close, and I'll see what there is to see. I hope you join us. Our episode today is written and produced by me, Jonathan Wright. More production and editing, along with the music, is by Taylor Swindells of Neighborhood Libraries. Special thanks for help with this episode to Drew Gilmore, Maddie Lee, Jared Ng, Ian Wright, Lauren Berkovich, and Chris Kelly. This podcast, it's just us, making this for you. If you like what you heard today, you can help us continue by rating and reviewing, or honestly, just telling your friends about it. That's the biggest compliment for a podcast. You can also contribute to our Patreon and get immediate access to all 6 episodes of Season 1. It's at patreon.com/hellounknown, all one word. Finally, if you have suggestions for new episodes or just comments, you can email us at hellounknownpod@gmail.com, or you can tweet at us at hellounknownpod. The next 2 episodes are out already for everyone. They are in your feed, so have a listen. And please subscribe, and you won't miss what's coming next. Okay, thanks for listening.